Start our second journal club assignment for the semester. This one is where we're going to take a look at an actual research study that was published, this one in the Romanian Journal of Experimental Applied Psychology. This is going to form the foundation for our first research project where we're going to write a paper about it. We are going to try to understand and get a sense about what things predict aggressive driving, and then we're going to go out and test some of those ideas in the field with actual people. For all of these journal clubs from now on, what you're going to see is they have the same set of 5 questions you're going to try to answer about these. What is the rationale of the study, and is this research relevant for people today? And aggressive driving seems pretty straightforward, but in fact, actually, if you look at the paper, and this talks about personality traits as predictors of aggressive driving violations on the road, and driving experience as moderating or playing a role in how much of an impact personality traits have. So a moderating variable, as we're going to talk about in Chapter 8, suggests that, in fact, personality and aggressive violations may be related, but only in people with a certain amount or a minimal amount of driving experience, as we'll take a look. Normally in these papers, what you'll see in the introduction, the first paragraph actually talks about sort of the relevance, the rationale for the study. For example, you can see we decided to study the factors that predispose a driver to aggressive violation, specifically the individual differences in terms of personality traits in relation to aggressive violations on the road. And they talk about some previous research that's already been done. And if you scroll down to the bottom, you'll see here in the very last paragraph, usually where they talk about is the actual rationale of the hypothesis. We assume, based on previous studies, that neuroticism will be positively related to aggressive violations, while conscientiousness will be negatively related. That means they predict that neuroticism will predict more aggressive violations, right, positive direction, and that conscientiousness will be associated with fewer aggressive violations. And then they go on to talk more about the hypothesis, right? So you're going to find often the hypothesis is here in the very last paragraph of the study. Then you're going to go into the method, and this will talk about the number of participants. You can see they have 219 young drivers. About half of them are women from the ages of 18 to 25. It gives you the standard deviation of their age and how long they've been driving. It talks about the different kinds of accidents they have and the different things they measured, the driving behavior questionnaire, the Hexaco personality inventory, and some demographic questions. Okay. Then they've got the results, and these results are all explored in R values, which are correlation coefficients. And here, actually, you can see in this table, Table 1, Pearson correlations of study variables. This is actually a correlation matrix. Some of you may have already seen this in a stats class. A correlation matrix actually shows you the correlations between these 8 variables here on the side and the 8 variables themselves, right? So these are just numbered. So variable number 1 here is honesty, humility. Variable number 2 here is emotionality. Variable number 3 is extroversion. And if you keep going, and variable number 8 is aggressive violations, or AV, as they've termed it. So that means that honesty, humility should always be perfectly correlated with itself, right? So there's always going to be a 1 here on this diagonal because all the variables are perfectly correlated with themselves. But you can see here then the correlation between emotionality and honesty, humility is 0.14. Down here, the correlation between honesty, humility, and aggressive violations is negative 0.34. That means that as people have higher levels of honesty, humility, so they're more honest and more humble, they have fewer aggressive violations, right? That's a negative correlation. The variables change in opposite directions. Okay, so that will sort of give you a sense, right? Negative correlations mean the variables change in opposite directions. Positive correlations, they go in the same direction, okay? You can see here in the figures, they've got some other correlations. So this is conscientiousness, is the C variable, and M is mileage, so low mileage, medium mileage, and high mileage. And this is their level of honesty. You can see here in figure 1, this is the number of aggressive violations against their level of honesty or humility. You can see people with high honesty, humility have fewer violations. Those with lower levels of honesty have more aggressive violations. But in fact, it actually varies based on their mileage. So people with high mileage, high M, so have driven a lot, they have a lot of driving experience, they actually have more aggressive violations, which maybe is just that if you're both low in honesty and you drive a lot, you probably get more easily frustrated, something like that, potentially that might be explaining that, okay? Here is a correlation with conscientiousness instead of honesty, humility, kind of showing the same pattern. So I've walked you through sort of the rationale, the results a little bit. We've kind of talked about the variables. So remember, independent variables are those that are manipulated by the researcher. Dependent variables are those that are measured by the researcher. So take a stab at predicting whether or not you think there are independent and or dependent variables in the study. Next, you're going to talk about two problems: gender, age, race, ethnicity, religious group, nationality. Are the measures not very good, for example? Are there better measures instead of some of the ones they used? That might require that you dive into the methods a bit. Um, and then lastly, in the discussion, you'll find a summary of the findings. So this very first paragraph usually kind of talks about what did we really find, and then we'll start to compare it to other research. So, and then you'll see here in their conclusion, this is where they think about, how might these be used to understand aggressive driving, and how can we fix like intervention strategies to help reduce aggressive driving, which addresses number 5 here at the very bottom. So take a look at that. If you have any questions, send me an email.